Oh god! So September Nintendo announced The Unthinkable, which is a full-on remake of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. I and a lot of other people did not see this coming at all, especially since we already had a Mario RPG remake on the way, and after all the interviews behind the scenes, a lot of people thought all hope was lost, so this remake getting announced was the definition of a miracle. So I think it's appropriate to continue the Paper Mario retrospectives I started a few years ago, starting with the one that was on Nintendo's worst selling console. And that game so happens to be Paper Mario Color Splash. So after the mixed to negative reception of Sticker Star, the fate of the series was up in the air for a while, with the Wii U slowly crashing and burning. The Wii U was practically dead in 2016 with literally no games besides Star Fox Zero. So while Nintendo fans were suffering due to severe drought and the lowest point during the Wii U days, suddenly one day a rumor started coming around about a new Paper Mario game for the Wii U. And then a few weeks later during the March Nintendo Direct, Nintendo confirmed that Paper Mario was coming to the Wii U. Hurrah! However, all that literally went downhill the moment it showed gameplay, as we realized it was not a return to form, but instead a sequel to one of the most infamous Mario games of all time. I remember the day they announced this in the Direct, and honestly, I and a lot of people practically died inside. With the only thing good coming from this reveal is that I was able to find Orlo's channel during the frustration of this game. However, as the months went by and the closer the game got to the release date, I saw gameplay during the Nintendo Treehouse Live, and honestly, it did look a bit more interesting than Sticker Star, but I was still hesitant on it because it is Sticker Star with a fresh coat of, Honestly, with all of this, the main thing I and a lot of other people were just asking is just, why? Why do a sequel to this one right here? I mean, if you literally ask anyone about the most acclaimed game in the series, it is mostly these two in particular. In one super hit, they completely decided to constantly change the gameplay in general, to the point where Paper Mario basically spent most of its life as an action-adventure game and not an RPG. The only reason why I think they decided to make a follow-up to Sticker Star is because it did sold well, so I guess they thought, hey, people wanted more of this because it's selling. Or B, it's because of the curse during the Wii U and 3DS days, where every series, if they have a Wii U and 3DS game, they both play similar, like with Mario 3D Land to 3D World, for example, and Mario Kart 7 to Mario Kart 8. And so, because of this, I guess Intelligent Systems decided to go on the bandwagon and do much the same thing. Because it's not like this game had good What?! Are you kidding me? Who's giving this thing an 8 out of 10? However, I did get the game when it did came out, and this game did surprise me because I thought it was a great improvement, but there were some issues I had with the game, and I did beat this, but it was like years ago, I think like 7 years ago, but I never really played this game again afterwards. So it'll be interesting to take a look towards arguably one of the most divisive Mario games of all time, because the reception for this game in particular is a bit different from Sticker Star because it's mostly divided of a love or hate it camp. So I'm very curious on how I will feel about the game. Will it be good? Bad? I already played the game and I don't even know about it. So with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins with a dark and stormy night where Peach and Toad visits a house with Mario in it, because I'm pretty sure that's not Mario's house. Unless he moved out and the old house is Luigi's now, I don't know. But anyways, so Peach told Mario about a crisis where she receives a letter, which so happens to be a lifeless Toad. Mario recognized the stamp that the Toad came in, and realized it is one from Prism Island. So Mario, Peach, and Toad then grab a boat and heads to the location to investigate the crime. They eventually arrive in the morning, where they discover the entirety of the town completely abandoned, trash with white spots everywhere. Where suddenly, the center of the town activates some sort of security measure, which opens a hatch with a sentient paint bucket. As Mario whacks him to wake him up with a hammer, we are introduced to Huey, Mario's main companion throughout the adventure. However, as Mario gets to know his new partner, Toad gets suddenly ambushed in the background by a bunch of Shy Guys, draining him with his color. However, fighting the Shy Guys is not that simple because Mario's going to need some paint for whatever reason. And so, Huey gives all the paint he has inside of him to Mario, which leaves him to a literal paper state. After defeating the Shy Guys and reviving Toad, it is then revealed that the Guardians of Prism Island, the big paint stars, have vanished across the land. And so it's up to Mario and Huey to explore the Prism Island to get the big paint stars back. And later, it was revealed that Bowser was behind the whole thing. Shocking, I know. So what happened was that one day, Bowser decided to take a trip to Prism Island to color his shell, where he accidentally mixed all the paint together into black paint, where he ended up absorbing all of it, which gave him this mysterious new power. And also he just kidnaps Peach. I'm not even surprised at this point. However, I'll give Bowser credit is that he does have an alternative plan in this game, instead of just kidnapping Peach, which is that he is stealing the paint from Prism Island to power up these giant bonsai bills to blast poisonous black paint across the land, which will basically kill everyone if Mario doesn't stop him, so now he has to go find the Guardians to save the day. The plot is very simple, but it's okay. Although I do have to mention one thing, and this is a very common opinion. I'm not really a fan how much they try to emphasize the fact that everyone's made out of paper, to the point where the story is based on them being paper. Where I honestly feel like with Origami King it was the most egregious. But another thing too I have to mention is that I kinda wish they gave a new villain for this game and not just use Bowser, because this is the first time Bowser became a villain in a Paper Mario game since the N64, because throughout the series we had a lot of original villains. But honestly, that doesn't matter, because I've always mentioned this before in my Paper Mario videos, but I always consider Paper Mario's story divided into two different sections. The first one is the A plot, and the second one is the B plot. In Thousand Year Door, the main A plot of the game is a big race to get the treasure, with Peach trying to figure out what the Xnauts' plans are in mind, with the B plot being the story with the chapter within, with one example of being where you're in this little stadium area where you're trying to get to the high rings while trying to investigate the shadiness within. This not only keeps the main plot in mind, but also gives a lot more variety on what Mario can do in his adventures. And in Color Splash, they somewhat return to this format, but since it's divided into a world map with smaller chunks, it's more of a bit of a micro plot within. Like, for example, in one of the plots, a professor lost his pet Chain Chomp in the woods, and now you have to go find him. This is when you head to his dig site, where you find yourself chased by this gigantic Chain Chomp, ending things off with you getting a bone. You then return with the bone, and that's when the Chain Chomp returns, where it turns out that the Chain Chomp he came with grew gigantic. And then this happened. So one of the biggest controversial part of Color Splash are the lack of original characters or NPCs, with most of the NPCs in the game just being Toads mostly again. And yeah, I fully agree on this. Having just Toads around just makes everything visually bland for the most part. Apparently with this game and other games, they had like a strict guideline from Intelligent Systems. And I think it's only from Intelligent Systems because from what I've seen over the years and such, it seems like the guidelines that Intelligent Systems keep stating are stuff that came from the studio themselves instead of Nintendo. I mean, Alpha Dream is another Mario RPG series, and they were able to get a lot of original characters no problem. And even with their lowest point with Paper Jam, it wasn't because Nintendo had them with a strict guideline. It was because of development issues and they put themselves in a severe corner. But I'm getting a bit too off topic here. So with Paper Mario Color Splash, I want to talk about specifically is the tone of the game. Because compared to the previous entries with Paper Mario Thousand Year Door and Super Paper Mario, where they have a much more serious tone, and compared to Sticker Star, which has a nothing tone, Color Splash leans a lot more to a comedic take for the Mario series. And I mean way more comedic. All the characters throughout the game will always have a quick one-liner, and a lot of jokes here and there. And honestly, it pretty works, because when the plot lacks a good amount of character and depth, it's honestly just pure damn funny. This has honestly the funniest writing I've ever seen in a Mario game. The localizers clearly had a lot of fun writing a lot of these quips. A lot of jokes do lean a bit more to like dad humor, which is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. And even sometimes they are self-aware and actually make fun of the various tropes of Mario games. I love this little plot they had where in order to progress you need to stop this whirlpool and you have to go through this parallel dimension area. And it's revealed that the whirlpool was made due to a washing machine. Ending things off with Mario snagging the washing machine and an angry mob of enemies attacking him because he stole their laundry. And honestly, the enemies in this game are the best part because they have a lot of fun dialogue. It honestly makes me think of the Batman Arkham games where they pretty much made these generic goons have a lot of fun dialogue you could just listen to. Because these guys easily make the world feel a lot more alive. With one of the funnier lines I can remember in this game in the Coliseum section, where Mario needs to defeat all these enemies by finding a superstar, where the announcer will say Mario cheats his way to victory, and then calls him a war criminal. I'll always prefer the worlds and stories from the Thousand Year Door in 64, but I've gotta say that Color Splash definitely has its own kind of personality. Now, personality I think is a good direction for the series, mostly because I have one more big critical issue with this game, so let's just get this over with. And so, with nobody's goddamn surprise, the battle system in this game is pretty bad. It's literally the same thing from Sticker Star, with some things better, but some things way worse. For one, the battles are back to the resource management from Sticker Star, but instead of stickers, it's cards. As you use your Wii U gamepad to scroll around and try and pick the right card, and set up your card and then paint the card just to flick it. And honestly, I guarantee you, the reason why they returned to the battle system for Sticker Star is just a dumb excuse to use the Wii U gamepad. Mario once again can use his jump and hammer and such with other items, and so on and so forth. Thing items also return in this game, but luckily it's less tedious to use them this time. As unlike the previous game where you have to backtrack consistently just to use them, you just get them right out the spot. And I'm not kidding, these are literally the best part of the battle system, because they go really over the top with the animations for these things. However, most of the time I just use a simple hammer since it's quick and they go down instantly. I know I could just run, but for some reason I have the worst luck and Mario just keeps tripping. However, at least you get EXP during battles, because if you have enough EXP, you can upgrade your paint amount. And considering that paint is very important throughout the game, it is kind of useful for the most part, but I would honestly prefer if they have like EXP for hearts or something. And considering the fact that you do get experience points and the battles go fast, I can just label these as just tolerable. Not good at all, but just whatever. Until this piece of garbage shows up. So throughout the game, when you enter a battle, there is a rare chance that chemicals show up to mess with your cards. This is either just flipping the cards around, which makes you screw up if you're sorting it around, or something way worse, which changes your card to a weaker form that drags the battles a lot longer. And they know how much bullcrap this is because they outright disables the run button every time Kamek shows up. And I'm not kidding, these Kamek sections are literally the worst part of the game. They're pretty much just annoying time wasters that you need to just do just so progress. And as for the bosses, they did something interesting and brought characters that have never appeared in a Paper Mario game before. Sounds good, but the characters they choose are the freaking Koopalings, making their first and, for some reason, only debut in the Paper Mario series. And I do not need to explain the issues here because around this time the Koopalings were pretty much oversaturated, and the oversaturation in Paper Mario just makes it a lot worse. And how they were implemented in this game, it's honestly kind of hit or miss. A lot of set pieces here are interesting for the most part, but some of them could be a bit forgettable. Like I forgot about the Wendy boss fight, with the only thing I could think of was like the rhythmic pattern. And then you just fight Iggy in the gladiator area. And Roy just came in the last minute. Although Morton was kind of funny. And Lemmy's boss fight being Circus Team is honestly a perfect fit. The funniest moment with the Koopalings I could think of was with Ludwig, when he introduces himself with this giant battleship. And when the camera zooms out, it turns out that the battleship wasn't really big at all. It was just pretty much haphazardly made because Ludwig didn't think Mario would come so soon. And as for the bosses, you just pretty much just use all the cards you can do, your most powerful ones, and they go down instantly. They do get harder in later fights, but the one thing that they all have in common is that there is a certain thing item that you need to have to beat them. And luckily, unlike Sticker Star, the game is way more lenient towards hints with which item you need. Whether it's searching for the dialogue or certain clues you can find throughout the environments. Or you can go to Port Prisma, where you'll find this little toad in the trash that'll give you a good hint on which item you'll need. So in Paint Mario Color Splash, Mario is exploring various areas of Prism Island to find the big paint stars. Throughout his class, the levels are divided into small chunks via the world map. And the best part is that unlike Sticker Star, there's no generic grass theme, generic desert theme, or anything like that. Instead, the environments in this game are way more diverse and has way more interesting themes towards them. There are a couple times where you'll find yourself in the simple beach or underground sections, but mostly you'll find yourself in a lot of interesting settings. And exploring these areas is honestly the most fun thing in the game, as there's tons of things to explore, do, and find a lot of secrets. And stuff like this I can really dig. In fact, I was enjoying exploring so much, I was able to look past the terrible battle system. Throughout the areas, you also find these little white blank spots where Mario can use to paint the world, restoring it and get rewarded with coins or cards. You even do it to revive a bunch of toads, and I've gotta say something real quick. I know that a lot of these characters are made of paper, but with Mario's perspective in this game, this actually seems very gruesome. I mean, the local shop nearby literally has a dead toad in there. Who the hell shops with a dead body nearby? But those aren't the only toads you'll be finding, because there are way more important toads to find, like the rescue toads, since they are very important and help Mario progress through the game. And some of these could be well hidden, which really encouraged me to explore and find every nook and cranny in the game. Kinda similar to something like a collectathon. And if you do miss one of the toads, you can always go to HQ and ask this guy to ask which location the toad is. That way you don't have to go on a wild goose chase. And it's not just like simple exploring you're going to be doing in this game, because there's also a lot of things you're doing in this game as well. Like in one level where you're trying to explore this haunted hotel trying to appease the 6 dead toads. And sometimes when they do have a little bit of more of a progression system similar to the more traditional Paint Mario games, they do it in a weird and interesting way. Where once you unlock this area where it's a train station, you immediately get to the goal instantly. However, in a later section, you need to get all the toads to the restaurant, and in order to do so, you need to get the train repaired. And once you finally go to the restaurant, you do a little cool callback to the original Paper Mario games, where Peach does a little cooking minigame, ending things off the same way where you need to put it in the oven and count how many seconds you need to pull it out. And I'll be completely honest, after doing this minigame, I was actually craving pizza because, goddamn, they make paper look delicious. This game makes me want to eat paper. There's even a section in this game that calls back to Super Paper Mario, where you have to flip from 2D to 3D in this Mario Bros. 3 level. The only criticism I do have is the progression with some of these levels. Because how the progression works is that throughout the game you have to find these little mini paint stars that'll lead you away to another level. Sometimes there will be multiple, which honestly is there just to make the map a lot more easier to navigate through. Because some of them are at the beginning of the area, which honestly I don't really mind too much. But then there's stuff like this, where you have to go through this area 3 god dang times. Because there's 3 paint stars, with one of them being the main one, and 2 optional ones, which are literally next to each other. Which I wouldn't mind too much, but they placed it at the near end of the level. This is just straight up shameless padding. But luckily this doesn't happen too much, with the most egregious one being just the forest area. But most of the time, it's pretty much very straightforward. Okay, going back to the puzzles I mentioned earlier, I've gotta say is that they have massively improved the puzzles in this game. I really need to reinstate that. Sticker Star did such an abysmal job with direction in the game, and how you solve puzzles. A lot of times I was just pretty much stump on some of these sections because I didn't get the right sticker, and other times it makes you just defy common sense, like jumping on this waterfall for some reason. Because yes, using a vacuum cleaner is very fitting to stop a tornado. But luckily with Color Splash, they're way more straightforward and great with directions. A lot of times when it requires a thing item, it's always the one that you get beforehand. And some of the clues that they do have makes a lot more sense. Like using a bone to bring back the Chain Chomp because dogs like bones. Or using a compass to sail through a foggy storm. They even added a brand new puzzle element to the game called Cutout. It's pretty much an evolution of the Paperize mode from Sticker Star, where instead of just grabbing elements from the background and just putting them in the inventory for a puzzle, this time you're going to have to rely on forced perspective to use the puzzle, by making a silhouette of what is a simple pathway for Mario to climb. You can make the argument that some of these could be a bit too easy, but honestly after Sticker Star, this is a massive improvement. And the biggest improvement I've gotta say from Color Splash is the partner, because holy crap, Huey is way better than Kirsty in every way. Because in the previous game, she was just pretty much annoying, she pretty much nagged against Mario a lot, and she did absolutely nothing. Huey, on the other hand, is funny, likable, and does help Mario a bit more, making him easily the standout character in this game. Not only by visual design because he's actually an original character, but he's just well written. I even have friends who don't really like Color Splash at all who says that Huey was a good standout. And honestly felt like a good brief moment of what Paper Mario used to be with characters. Now, graphically and aesthetically, this game looks amazing for the Wii U. Even though I'm not really a fan of how the plot is mostly revolved around them being paper, I do have to give them credit, but the environments in this game looks very stunning. If the original aesthetic of the game is trying to make a living, breathing paper world, I'd say this and Origami King gets the most correct. Even the littlest things, like how Mario moves and such, and how he jumps where he bends slightly to emphasize motion. Although I do have to mention is that there is just one big thing that was surprisingly controversial about the graphics of this game, which is that in previous games, how they do the characters is that they use rig animations to make everything very puppet-like. This leads to the animation being very smoothly, but going for Color Splash, they instead converted it into fully 2D sprites, with special shaders to make everything a lot more paper-like. All I could say is that it's definitely different, but I wouldn't say it's either better or worse. It's practically comparing to apples to oranges. Although I do have to mention is that I do not get the hate about the white outlines. Like, I do not care about the white outlines at all, I could just take it or leave it. But I wouldn't say it is as bad compared to the other problems Paper Mario was having at the time, like the lack of original characters, the fact that it was losing its RPG roots, etc, etc. And as for the music, it is once again really phenomenal. I do not agree with the direction that Paper Mario was going for at the time. Even though I do enjoy some of the stuff that is included in the game, I wouldn't say it's a direction that Paper Mario should be going for. But I do have to say, if there is one thing I think the newer games does a lot better than the original one, is probably the soundtrack. During the Wii U days, Mario's soundtrack leaned a lot more to the jazz genre with 3D World and Mario Kart 8 for example. And honestly, I don't mind it, I really love jazz. And all the soundtracks in this game is very catchy, and honestly I do listen to a lot of these. And I do not know why, but one of my favorite soundtracks in the game is the Shy Guy Circle theme. I do not know why, but it's such a catchy theme. So as tradition for these Paper Mario videos, before we wrap things up, I think we should talk about the final battles of the game. So every time you try to collect a big paint star, it restores a big chunk of Prism Island back to color. Which leads to a funny gag where when Mario and Huey discover a giant blank coin, when they finally get to cover it, it only counted as one, which was pretty funny. But anyway, so as you collect all the big paint stars, they eventually form a good path to Bowser's Castle, where you have to do the final battle. However, there's just one big problem. It is way too slippery for Mario to climb up. And that's when suddenly... Luigi appears to save the day, as he uses his car to drive all the way up to Bowser's Castle, where he gets to be the getaway driver. After taking down the final Koopaling, you then find yourself in a giant black paint factory. And so, before you get to fight Bowser, you need to destroy this place so he doesn't cause any more trouble. This leads to the entire underground of Bowser's castle flooding with black paint. And with everything destroyed, it's time for the final battle. The first phase is pretty simple. All you have to do is just use your powerful items and make sure Bowser's health go down. Once Bowser's health goes halfway down, this is when the biggest twist of the game comes in, where it turns out that the black paint inside of Bowser is alive and it's been possessing him, because once he removes the black paint off Bowser's head, that's when he suddenly snaps out of it for a brief sec. And now this is when phase 2 comes in. Now this is when things get very interesting. Every time you try to attack Bowser, he then uses the paint that was on the floor to attack you, and then it just replenishes health. This is where Huey comes in, where you need to paint Huey to turn him back into 3D. That way, Huey can help Mario to stop the black paint. How this works is that you need to remove chunks of the black paint off Bowser as much as you can. And this is when Huey comes in, as when Bowser uses his black paint to attack you, you need to use your block move to make Huey absorb the black paint. That way you can stop Bowser from replenishing his health. But this leads to an interesting risk and reward system where the more paint you remove from Bowser, the more harder it is for his attacks to block. Ending things off with this one final blast where it's pretty much very tricky to time, but it's very satisfying to do so. And once the black paint has been removed, Bowser then wakes up wondering why Mario is here. And this leads to another funny line where he asks if Mario scheduled a kart racing game. You know, I'd like to think that outside of the whole kidnapping Peach thing, Bowser's actually just a cool little guy that just likes to do activities with his son. And with that, Bowser is defeated. Mario then revives Peach, and then they hightail out of there before the castle blows up with black paint. However, Huey cannot leave, because once Bowser's castle blows up, it'll essentially become a big giant black paint bomb. Huey then absorbs all the paint from Bowser's castle and transforms it into a card. Huey then leaves the area far, far away so no one can get harmed by the black paint. Prisma Island is safe, although Mario wonders where is Huey, as they try to celebrate with the nightly sky and fireworks. And that was Paper Mario Color Splash, and overall, the game was honestly pretty good. I liked it. The game is nowhere as good as the original Paper Mario games that started it all, but honestly for what it is, I did have a good time with it. I wouldn't say it's great because there is a lot of issues I have with the game, like the pacing issues with the battle system, which honestly I wouldn't blame anyone who don't like this game because of that reason, because my playthrough was more tolerable, but I wouldn't say it would be the same for another person. And of course, the lack of original characters. Because even though I do like this game, I would not say this would be the first Paper Mario game to try out. I would definitely say the 3 games that are on the Nintendo Switch have the best consistency when it comes to quality. Because the low minutes for those games are not as bad as the low minutes in Color Splash, because holy crap, some of the battle system in these games could be very tedious as hell. To the point where I do have to say is that even though I do like this game, I'd say go in with this game with caution. It was a fun trip for me, but I am ready to go back to Paper Mario's roots with the Thousand Year Door. It took God knows how long, but we finally have a Paper Mario game in HD that's an actual RPG. But honestly, despite that, I still had a really good time revisiting this game, and honestly, I did have a bit more of appreciation for Color Splash going through. It's not perfect, I honestly think it's like a 7 out of 10 kind of experience, but even still, I honestly say it's worth checking out like the more flawed titles. But that's just my personal opinion, and that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!